Way over in West Africa, there's a country that's, famous for its incredible diamond wealth, but it's also holding onto a secret that's much, much deeper and way stranger. We're going to dive into this mysterious blue stone that seems to just defy everything we know about science and history.
They came from the sky. I mean, can you imagine hearing that? That's what a local tribal chief told an Italian geologist way back in 1990. It sounds like a fantastic story, right? The kind of folklore you might hear anywhere. But what if there was something more to it? What if he wasn't just telling a story?
Because you see, when this strange blue stone was finally put under the microscope, the results, well, they didn't solve anything. In fact, they only made the mystery even deeper. This is the story of a modern-day quest to solve a truly ancient riddle.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Our story begins in Sierra Leone. It's a place of just stunning natural beauty, and it's packed with incredible mineral resources. But we are not here to talk about its most famous export. Just to give you a little perspective here, since 1930, we're talking over $15 billion worth of diamonds have been officially pulled from the ground. So, you'd think, in a land that's just overflowing with precious gems, some new weird stone wouldn't cause much of a stir, right? Well, you'd be completely wrong.
So that same year, this Italian geologist Antonio Petiti is chatting with a tribal chief, probably about diamonds. But then the chief brings up something else, something he says fell from the sky. A shaman then leads Petiti to a specific spot, starts digging, and boom, unearths these incredible, brilliant blue stones. And just like that, the legend of the sky stones had crashed into the modern world.
Now, after that initial discovery, the stones kind of just became a curiosity. They sat around for decades, really. That is, until one man's chance encounter with them reignited the entire mystery and kicked off a personal obsession to find the truth no matter what.
So here's how it all played out. They're first found back in 1990, right? But then the mystery just goes dormant for more than 20 years. It's not until 2013 that a gemologist and meteorite collector named Jared Collins just happens to stumble upon one. And that's what launches this 12-plus-year mission to figure out what in the world these things actually are.
And in his own words, you can just feel the excitement. Collins is at a gem show in Hong Kong, and he sees this thing. He says, "I knew there was something unusual about this. I asked the guy, what is this? And he said, that's sky stone, supposedly from the heavens. He knew right away it was something special. And get this, he had to bother the dealer for a whole year before he finally managed to buy a tiny 1-gram piece."
Okay, so Collins gets his hands on this tiny piece and immediately sends it off for analysis. He's probably expecting to hear that it's some rare, new, natural mineral. But what the lab came back with was way more shocking. The stone, they said, wasn't natural at all. So the lab tells him the main ingredient is something called calcium orthosilicate. Now here's the thing. That compound can be found in nature, but the analysis showed that the way it was structured in the sky stone, it just didn't look geological. It pointed to something else entirely.
And this difference is absolutely crucial. See, natural rocks, they're formed by insane amounts of pressure over millions of years. But the sky stone, its structure looked like something that was formed by intense heat, not pressure. The conclusion was pretty much unavoidable. This thing appeared to be artificial, man-made.
The fancy scientific term for this stuff is a geopolymer. So let's break that down. The big takeaway is that this mystical, beautiful stone from the sky was basically a type of ancient, super high-quality concrete. A fake, a forgery. But hold on, because that conclusion just blew the doors open to an even bigger, crazier mystery.
Because, okay, fine, maybe scientists could figure out what the stone was made of, but there was one piece of the puzzle they absolutely could not explain. Its stunning, almost unearthly blue color.
And trust me, it wasn't for lack of trying. Collins sent samples to 15 different labs all around the world. We're talking top scientists analyzing this material, and every single one of them came back stumped by the exact same thing. And here's what is just so mind-bending about the blue. It's not a paint, it's not a dye on the surface, it is part of the material itself. So if you break off a piece, the color literally, as he says, falls apart with it. Modern science has absolutely no clue what this pigment is or how on earth it was fused into the stone. So let's just recap. We have an artificial, man-made material of unknown age, colored by a completely unknown substance.
This leads us right to the central paradox of the sky stones. If they were man-made, then how in the world were they made?
Right, because making a geopolymer like this is not simple. You need to get the right raw materials, mix them up, and then, and this is the critical part, you have to bake them at a sustained, super high temperature. And that process requires a very specific piece of tech, a kiln.
And right here, this is the absolute core of the problem, and Collins says it perfectly. The analysis suggests these stones could be thousands and thousands of years old, but to make them, you would have needed a kiln in Sierra Leone at a time when, according to everything we know from the historical record, they just didn't have them there, period.
Think about it. The earliest kilns we know about were invented in Mesopotamia. That's thousands of miles away from Sierra Leone, around 6000 BC. The timeline just doesn't work. The geography doesn't work. It doesn't add up. So, what is this stuff doing buried in the ground in West Africa?
And that pretty much brings us to where this whole crazy story stands today. We're left with two sets of facts, one from science and one from history, and they flat out contradict each other.
The paradox is simple, but it's also really profound. On one hand, scientific analysis says the stone is artificial, it's man-made. On the other hand, the historical record says the technology you would need to make it just wasn't there. Both of those things can't be true. And yet, the evidence for both sides is strong.
So after more than a decade of digging into this is where Jared Collins is. He's still hunting for an answer, totally convinced that there's some fundamental piece of the story that we're all missing. His quest is far from over.
So we're left with this final, just tantalizing question. The local tribe said they came from the sky. Science says they were made by intelligent hands, using a technology that shouldn't have existed back then. Could these stones be actual physical evidence of a lost technology, maybe from a forgotten civilization, a lost chapter in human history? For now, the stones aren't talking. They're keeping their secrets.